Okay, hello. This is a continuation of the summary of my analysis of how the USA is starting a new Cold War with Russia. All right. And we've been talking about the Industrial Revolution and how the Industrial Revolution made warfare much, much more profitable. Profit coming from weapons production, munitions production itself, not from the resources gained from warfare. All right. So the last thing we talked about was how the Industrial Revolution led to machine printing, and that made mass media possible, which greatly increased the ability to spread propaganda. And an early use of propaganda was to pump up nationalism, patriotism, to get people to want to fight the wars that the leaders wanted to fight. And we said nationalism, patriotism is totally rooted in pride, self serving, not in inherent goodness of your nation, not that your nation is totally good or the best nation, right? Every damn person from every damn nation is patriotic, not to other nations, but to their nation. Why? Because it's their nation. It's about me and mine. Russia's no better than the United States, but all the damn Russians are patriotic for Russia. Germany's no better than France, but all the damn Germans are patriotic for Germany, not France. All right, that's so intuitively obvious that for anyone to deny that is simply, I don't know, ridiculous. It's, I don't want to say. All right, so patriotism is powerful, and the masses are always suckers for patriotism. Patriotism. Why? Because it is so powerful. Why? Because it is rooted in self. Me feel good, especially pride and ego. It's me, mine. And the self is the core of who we are. The self is our soul. The self is a monstrous little id that motivates and drives us. And the self is our God because it is the thing that we want to serve and please the most. Christians might say, no, I serve God. Bullshit. We're all sinners because we always put self before God. Patriotism is powerful because it is rooted entirely in self. The me. People will say patriotism is love of something greater than self. Bullshit. It is not love of country, it is love of my country. Right? You know, people are going to say, whoa, oh, I love my country because it's democracy. Well, you know, we're not the best democracy. We're 25th down the list. All right? I mean, that's not bad. It's almost top 10%. But Norway's number one. Why don't we love Norway? No, Norway's not my country. USA's my country. Freedom. People say, oh, I love USA because we're free. Well, you know, freedom, on the freedom index, we're 44th. Norway's number one. Why do we love Norway? Why do you love the USA when we're 44th? I mean, that's pretty mediocre. It's top half. Maybe right around top. It's above top third, right? Around top quarter, right? But we're not nearly the best. But you love USA because it's my country. On and on down the list. What objective reason? As far as wars, we're the biggest warmonger nation around. We fought so many damn wars. Now, not in people's minds, because they know nothing. And then they think all our wars are fought for freedom. My ass. You look at our wars. We fight these wars for aggressive expansion, taking territory, taking resources, for economic reasons. And those economics have evolved over time, especially with the Industrial Revolution, where warfare in itself is a big moneymaker. It's not what you gain from war, it's the warfare itself. So, the me, the mind, the id, the self is at the core of what makes patriotism so damn powerful. It is totally narcissistic and sickening. You know, I mean, I honestly hate patriotic people, right? It's all bullshit self. They say, no, I love something bigger than my... Bullshit! You love your country because it's your country. It's all about self. But the idiots, the low-life masses, love their patriotism. Patriotism is redneck pig slap, fed to masses to feed their pride and ego by clever people to manipulate them. So how did patriotism, nationalism get started? Well, historians cite the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars as the birth of modern nationalism. And honestly, a lot of European nations didn't exist until after the Napoleonic Wars. A lot of them were formed in the 19th century. So, here's the Napoleonic Empire. Here's France, okay? Napoleon's French. They conquered Spain, Italy, you know, this area up here, Switzerland, so forth, right? Austria, Hungary, Czech, Slovenia's down here somewhere. Poland, Germany, and Denmark up here, right? All this territory conquered by Napoleon, all right? And the power of the French forces was fueled by nationalistic passions of men fighting to protect their newly won democracy, right? The French Revolution was 1789, lasted a few years there. And then started the French Revolutionary Wars, after which you got the Napoleonic Wars, when Napoleon came to power, right? So these guys were fighting for their newly won democracy, right? Europe was a bunch of monarchies, right? France was really the first democracy in Europe. That threatened all the monarchies, right? And so the French were fighting to protect their democracy. Now, they fought hard, unlike mercenary forces, which were crap, always crap, forever crap. All right, why? Because they're fighting for pay. And their lives, in their opinions, are worth far more than the pay they get. So they're not going to fight hard. There's many cases in European history where mercenaries switched sides in the middle of a battle. The other side paid more. The other side fed their troops better. The other side had better living conditions. So they switched sides based on that. All right? No loyalty. All right? You think they're going to be good fighters? So that's one thing. And then French aggression, their conquest of all these territories, that fueled nationalistic passions in the conquered territories. All right? And then third, European leaders sought to copy the war-fighting power of French forces, so they manipulatively manufactured patriotism in their countries. Right? First, Prussia was the first to do that on official government level. But on the eve of World War I, pretty much all the European nations were pumping out their patriotism. Including the USA, we're pumping up patriotism. Jack up the people to fight. And they're suckers for it. Patriotism is used to manipulate the masses by feeding them with ego-stroking bullshit. Pride, ego, self, me feel good. Me wave flag. We're number one. We're number one. USA, USA. Right? It's a baseless emotion. It is not really about our values and principles, right? You know, people claim that all the time. It was about the bullshit. You know, I believe the USA has good values and principles. Do we always follow them? Hell no. Look at people, right? Here's a value and principle. Freedom of speech, right? People say freedom of speech, freedom of speech. But if someone says something they don't like, they do their best to shut him up. They do their best to lie and deny what he's saying. They do their best to attack what he's saying, even if it's totally true. They'll try to they'll get him fired from his job. Right? So it's freedom of speech for me, but not for you. That's human nature. Voting rights for me. Oh, but they'll try to manipulate the state laws to restrict voting rights for other people. People are bullshit. All right. So nationalism, patriotism, it's driven by pride, ego, self-serving, me feel good, me and mine, more for me. It whips up powerful emotions. Why? Because it's rooted in self. And emotions are irrational. Hate, bias, distortions, unfairness. No regard for our values and principles. In fact, it violates them. You put your patriotism, yourself, your country before your values. All right, now, nationalism, patriotism are near synonymous. One is love of country. One is love of country above other countries. And they're almost inseparable. Bullshit, this discrimination. Both lead to the increased ability of leaders to manipulate their populations into supporting government policies, especially wars. Get them all pumped up. Get them waving their damn stupid flags. Right? Oh, my flag's better than your flag. Bullshit. Freaking patriotic people. All right. Now, that's one factor. All right, the French Revolutionary Wars. Another factor was the Industrial Revolution. But the Industrial Revolution was made possible by the Agricultural Revolution. Remember we said the Agricultural Revolution led to cheap food, surplus labor, took away agricultural jobs. That made labor available for industrial production. Industrial Revolution was all about machine production. And machine production greatly increased the volume of production. That was first applied to textiles, but pretty quickly it was also applied to weapons in the United States. That resulted in the formation of the American system, it's called. It formed between 1820s and 1850s. And it was machine mass production of weapons and munitions. That helped fuel arms races between nations, major buildup of weapons stockpiles. That increased the threat and increased military competition and led to jingoism, which is an extreme form of militaristic patriotism. Oh, more nationalism. All right. So that's one way the Industrial Revolution led to nationalism. Another way is the Industrial Revolution and machine production increased the volume of production. You had machine production of building machines, And these building machines like cranes, steamrollers, steam shovels, steam dredges, that allowed for machine construction, right? Increased expansion of interstate communication, communication within your nation, right? Uh, in the form of building roads, canals, railroads. There's also facilitating the postal service and telegraph, right? All this led to growth in interstate commerce, all right, commerce within the nation, and another factor was key was the reduction of internal tariffs. All right, Great Britain led the way on that. Uh, France and the French Revolution then pushed it, and then Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon's empires, he pushed the breakdown of internal tariffs throughout his empire. And the growth in interstate commerce led to increase in organic solidarity from mutual benefit. There was mutual benefit from trade, commerce. I mean, that's why you trade, because you're going to benefit from it. Both sides benefit. So, like, okay, all right, we'll keep up this trade. Now, that's what creates organic solidarity. You help each other, right? And that increases common interest within a nation, leading to a sense of nation or nationalism. All right, so the Industrial Revolution, machine production, increased volume was applied to the media. So you got mass media, starting first with the penny press, newspapers, magazines, books, paperbacks, but also electronic stuff like telegraph. Later, it's going to be telephone, radio, internet, so forth. All right. Cell phone reality, which is retard reality. And telegraphs, for example, allowed increased speed of transmission. And also you had wire services where you had increased breadth of transmission, where one news agency then quickly spreads news to multiple newspaper outlets. All right. All this increased the capacity for propaganda, which increased nationalism because propaganda was first used to build up nationalism. Why? To get the damn stupid people pumped up for wars. They're suckers for it. But they love their patriotism. Why? Because it makes them feel so damn good. What low-life cheap crap is that? Me feel good. The fucking caveman id. Yeah, me feel good. All right, and then let's see. Mass media increased propagation of national histories, and I put histories in quotes here because so much of history is bullshit. Right? It's so easy to write bullshit line history, and then you get people saying, "Oh, he's trying to rewrite history." Man, history says bullshit to begin with. Historians are either stupid or liars. Oh man, I'm having trouble thinking. So all the myths, legends, enemies, and heroes. One of the best ways of getting people to back war, right, is to manufacture enemies. Whenever you manufacture enemies, you dehumanize them. Right? You make them some evil animal, some gorilla or some whatever, right? Some caricature. But for heroes, you make it specific. You pick out certain guys you want to pump up as heroes. That always works. That's passed through the media. All the legends of the goodness of our country. Oh, we fight our wars for freedom. Why do people People believe that. Americans across the board believe it's totally baseless. But it works because they know nothing. Who studies our wars besides me? No one. No one bothers to crack a book. All right, so H-I-J-K-L. L's over here somewhere. Where the hell is L? I forget. L right here. So the Industrial Revolution, machine production, increased volume of production, that required increased need for raw materials. If you're producing more, you need more raw materials. And that increased the need for colonies, right? So that increased colonial competition. Nations racing against each other, fighting each other to get colonies. That created conflict. That created war. That was a big buildup to World War I. All right. Increased production volume. You need to have increased need for export markets. If you're making more, if you can't sell it, price is going to drop. Then you're going to go out of business. You need to get export markets, so you need colonies, right? But that screws the colonies. That screws their economies. But you're not thinking that. You're thinking of yourself. And then mechanized transportation facilitated expansion of colonies. Steamships, steam trains, especially trains, because that allowed expansion into the interior of the countries. No longer were you limited to just a port, right? You can expand and control the transportation of goods within the country efficiently with a train, right? And another factor was the whole system of industries in the home countries, supported by colonies to provide raw materials and markets, all right? This forming an autarkic trading bloc, all right? A self-contained, isolated trading bloc, all right? Those were the economic engines of the time, all right? Including the United States Western expansion, which was essentially the same as, European colonization overseas, except we did it within our own boundaries. Of course, most of it wasn't it wasn't our land. It was Indian land, so we had to kill them first, right? But then once we our expansion into the West, right, development of resources, fueling our industries, was the exact same thing as what the Europeans did in expanding into their overseas colonies. The same economic system. That was the system that worked at that time. Finally, there was a long depression. There's multiple factors for the long depression, but the fact that there were depressions from the early 1870s on to the turn of the century, this fueled the competition for colonies, right? And lastly, the need for profitable investments. When investment opportunities were oversaturated and dried up at home, you had better investment opportunities in the colonies, right? Investing in transportation, investing in production, right? Investing in infrastructure development, right? Things you're going to make money from every damn day. Water, sewage, streetcars, electricity, telegraphs, things like that. All right. So now, all that increased the need for colonies, which increased colonial competition, the race for autarkic empires, autarkic trading blocs, which are inherently conflict creating, competitive, leading to wars. All right. And then roughly the 1880s, this caused a rise in economic nationalism. Your nation's competing against other nations, and neo-mercantilism, I mean, they're essentially the same thing. Neo-mercantilism, fancy term that historians use for uh, the shift away from, you know, Adam Smith type free market, which never really existed. The only country that really went down that path was Great Britain. France dabbled in it for a short time. So did Holland. But that's about it. Right? There was no classic, free trade era. All the other countries, including the USA, including Germany, for example, maintained high damn tariffs. Right? So there was a brief period where a small handful of countries moved to lower tariffs, but there was a retreat right away to more increased protectionism. So that increased autarkic trading blocks. That increased competition, right? That increased us versus them mentality and external threat. And all this, especially these autarkic trading blocks, were key factors that led to World War I, World War II, and the Cold War. Cold War, the autarkic trading blocks was East versus West. USA and the capitalist countries versus the Soviet Union and the commie countries. All right. And this led to increased self-benefit based on my country, my nation, over your nation. That's nationalism. All right. All the rednecks were, honestly, I had a girl walk into my class once and say to my face, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's have a trade war. Right? And I'm thinking, what an ignorant redneck. Right? Have no understanding of economics. Right? Have no understanding of the political, military ramifications of trade wars. Right? Dealing with ignorant, redneck, uneducated, unintelligent people. All right. Oh, so this leads to in-group versus out-group differentiation. My group versus your group. All right. Xenophobia. That's fear and hate of foreigners. Stereotyping. Dehumanizing your enemies. You exploit irrational emotions. Fear-mongering. Fear-mongering always works. I swear. People are suckers for fear-mongering all the time. You want to start a war, whip up patriotism and whip up fear-mongering. They go hand in hand. You'll get all the idiots to start waving their flags. Bunch of monkeys. They fall for it so easy. Hate and xenophobia. All right. So P, I want to give you some more factors that led to the colonial race. This heated competition for colonies, all right, which led to war. So again, like I said, colonies and colonial expansion were part of the economic engine at that time, where you have industries in your home country fueled by colonial expansion, right? And that leading to national wealth, and national wealth being the basis for military power, and that affecting national security, right? Which increased the need for this competition, right? Increased national economic nationalism, which is essentially the same as neo-mercantilism. I mean, there's a lot to mercantilist policies. I can't explain that. It's very complicated, involved, right? Part of that was, trade wars, increased tariffs. Then you get these competing autarkic trading blocks. They're isolated from each other, right? And that decreases mutual benefit from trade. Remember how I said how you get solidarity from mutual benefit from trade? Well, this is the opposite, right? When you isolate, you get competition, you get animosity, you get hate, you get me versus them, right? You get shrinking of markets. You don't get expansion of markets. You don't get that David Ricardo increases in efficiencies. From production specialization. Uh, so you get decreased mutual benefit from trade. And then you had the entry of new competitors. USA, we entered the international colonial race late with the Spanish-American War. Earlier was Germany. Germany entered after 1871, which was the Franco-Prussian War. The German state didn't exist until after the Franco-Prussian War. Japan went down the path of imperialism, colonialism, after the Meiji Restoration of 1867. And they weren't too successful early on. They had the Sino-Japanese War, and they took some possessions from China, basically took control of Korea. They took the Liaotung Peninsula. They took Formosa. But then they're forced to give it all back by the Triple Intervention. Basically, Russia, France, and Germany all ganged up, forced Japan to give it all back. And then they moved in, especially Russia. All right? And dominated the Asian area, China. All right. And then Russia also entered the fray, in the late 19th century. They started building the Trans-Siberian Railroad. When did they start building that? I believe in the 1880s, right? They also moved into Asia about 1860. They took territory above the Amur River, and they took Vladivostok right around 1860. All right, established Vladivostok. And then another factor was the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, especially in the Balkans. That destabilized things. As the Ottoman Empire receded, that increased the race to gobble up and gain influence, spheres of influence in the Balkans, right? Which is a factor in World War One. Then you had increased colonial competition, increased industrial production, increased the need for raw materials and export markets. Then you had home market saturation, which meant that investments in increased production capacity back home was a waste and would lead to business failure. So you had more lucrative investment opportunities in the colonies, right? Another factor was a gold standard, and which restricted the money supply as economies were growing and as more nations adopted the gold standard. That put pressure on shortage of currency, which caused deflation, right? Falling of price, and falling price led to business failures, right? This is a factor in the Long Depression. Many other factors, right? I'm not saying it's the only factor. It was one of them. And then you had intellectual trash being passed around, like social Darwinism. How Darwinism, survival of the fittest of species, well, that's applied to societies, right? And that increases competition and threat. You had all sorts of journalistic propaganda like yellow journalism, jingoism, bullshit, right? Yellow journalism was a big factor in pumping up the American public idiots for the Spanish-American War, and it worked. All the bullshit the Hearst and Pulitzer presses were pumping out. Then you get increased military technology and arms races, increased military production volume, weapons production volume, and technology, especially in things like naval forces, naval technology, and mechanized technology, especially aircraft. Then later tanks came later. Rise of oil as a future of naval power and commerce. So oil was coming into the play, right? It became recognized that oil is going to be the basis of naval power and commerce, right? So that increased competition for oil reserves. A lot of the key players did not have oil in their country. Great Britain, France, Germany, right? These countries did not have oil in their countries. They had to get access. That increased competition, for example, for the Middle East. All right. All right. Increased colonial competition, all these factors. PQ. So the increased colonial competition resulted in increased exploitation of third world. You know, the first world, the colonial nations didn't give a rat's ass about what happened in the colonies. They didn't give a rat's ass of how they screwed the people there. They're worried about their competition, all right, and their own wealth. So this exploitation was especially by multinational corporations. You know, in fact, the first multinational corporations were like the East Indies companies, Dutch East Indies, British East Indies, French East Indies, right? Then West Indies companies, right? Then all sorts of multinational corporations. All right. So these guys are getting screwed, right? I'll explain again down here how it screwed them. So it's explained by Leninist communist ideology, not Marxist. Marx preceded Lenin by about a half a century, right? So Marx saw the early industrial revolution and how it affected, peoples and populations within a country, right? Lenin was seeing the latter. Lenin saw the latter part of the 19th century, and he saw what developed this colonial competition that developed in the 1870s, 1880s, right? Really got fierce, right? And how that increased the exploitation of these people. So Lenin said, you're not going to have a big problem within the country. It's going to be, in these third world countries where you're going to have the communist revolutions, where you got the third world country being exploited by the first world colonial power, right? And that's going to increase their desire for independence, their desire for decolonization. They don't want to be a damn colony anymore. They want to be their own nation, like we wanted to be our own nation. We didn't want Great Britain using and screwing us, right? I mean, really, why should they use and screw us? So let's take a quick summary of the system of colonialism. Now, this is a section of my evolution of the economics of war. It's a third stage. It's colonialism, and this led directly into World War I and World War II, because World War II was really a continuation of World War I. It also led to the wars of colonial independence, which were the hot part of the Cold War after World War II. All right. The hot wars were fought in the third world nations, trying to gain their independence. All right. And communism had the upper hand because they supported independence. All right. So colonialism starts with mercantilism. You capture and control a trading port. That's part of mercantilism. But then you conquer inland territory. And what makes that possible is mechanized transportation, steam trains. All right. You can utilize the resources. Why should you conquer inland territory unless you can control the resources, develop the resources? And you can't develop the resources unless you got a way of getting it to market. Then you install a dictator or king. This is always done. You pick a guy you can control. You pick a guy who can be used to lead a disparate territory. Basically, not along tribal lines, not along ethnic lines, right? But along the lines of territory that can be controlled by the first world colonial power. Put them all under the head of one dictator. Then you leverage concessions out of that dictator, right? Multiple ways of doing it. One of which is that dictator or king is hated, right? So his rule is at risk. You give him military weapons. You train his soldiers. You build up his forces. But you don't do that for free. You leverage concessions out of that. Or, a lot of cases, you corrupt the son of a bitch. It's like the Shahs of Iran, all right? They don't produce anything. They're not productive. They're a waste, but they rule. And they're rich. And they live opulent lifestyles. Well, how did they pay for it? They sold off everything. They sold off oil. They sold off their banking system. They sold off all the utilities, transportation, every damn resource. They sold off minting of currency. British controlled everything over there. They controlled the whole damn economy. You saw tax collection to maintain their life. Now, was that democratic? Did the people ever say that? Hell no. You know, I have a financial advisor who said, well, they got it fair and square. You know, they developed. Man, there's nothing fair and square about it. This was total exploitation of people. Then you control resource production. All right. Instead of relying upon merchants to bring crap down the stream, right, to the port, all right, now you control it. You control production. It's an upstream integration. You get direct control of supply, right? You better control price, and you better control profits. And you better ensure you have enough raw materials to feed the home industries. All right? Upstream integration. You build interior transportation, right? Well, that actually allowed this. This should come first, right? Trains, steamboats going up rivers. You control currency. In a lot of cases, you use the home currency, the British pound, the French franc. I mean, look at the French franc. It's still a dominant currency in West Africa today, right? Look at the dollar. Dollar is the dominant currency worldwide. And then you impose taxes, right? So you gain some revenues here, but the key thing here is with taxes, they gotta pay the taxes in home currency. To do that, they gotta work. So you got leverage to control labor. And there's other ways to control labor. You control this damn dictator. So you control labor laws. Right? Then you develop manufacturing. Why? Because it's cheaper. Wages are cheaper than the home country. Right? Gives you more profit margin. And if everyone's doing it, you better damn well do it as well. So if Germany's doing it, well, Britain better damn do it. France better damn do it. You control import and distribution markets. So all the extra stuff you're producing for your industries, right, home industries, you ship over there. All right? Otherwise, price is going to fall. Supply is going to exceed demand. Price is going to fall. Businesses are going to fail. All right? But what this does is it kills the local industries, the local economies in the third world countries. All right? It kills their industries, their economies, their trades. Then you secure trade routes, right? You build and then control urban infrastructure. And this is a moneymaker. It's cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching every damn day. You make money off of trains, trolleys, roads, electricity, water, sewage, every damn day. Communications, telegraph, telephone, banks, right? You control the damn banks. You control the currency. You control custom houses, tax collection. And with all this, you maximize the extraction of wealth out of that country. You suck them dry, right? Literally, you suck them dry. Now, are they considering what happens to the people there? Hell no. They're looking at themselves, their own wealth, and competition among other nations that are doing the same damn thing. We got to do it. Otherwise, we're going to lose out to other nations. But that leads to desperate poverty, underdevelopment. Why underdevelopment? Because there's no money to support businesses. Who's got money? You want to open a clothing store? Well, there's no money to buy your clothes. Nothing's going to open. It suppresses business development. It results in total dependency. Usually, the economy is based on an export of a single commodity. Sugar out of Cuba, right? Rubber out of Vietnam, whatever. Okay. And this fueled Leninist communist ideology. And that fueled the damn Cold Wars. All right. That's R, Q, R, S, S. Okay, S is over here somewhere. So S is, you have the Industrial Revolution and the Ag Revolution, right? All this leading to rapid migration to the cities, right? So you have rapid urbanization and increased unemployment. You got wretched living conditions. All this is the crap that Marx saw. That's why Marx was different than Lenin. Lenin saw this colonial competition. Marx was earlier. He saw all this happening, right? Insufficient and poor housing, lack of sanitation, garbage removal, sewage treatment, clean water treatment, rampant disease, a weakened workforce, lack of labor laws, no restrictions on hours, safety, no laws to protect safety, work conditions, no child labor laws, a lot of insecurity, hopelessness, a lot of enemy, which is a sense of loss of traditional values, and yet suicide rates are up, right? It makes them all insecure and susceptible to in-group, out-group, xenophobia, stereotyping, right? All this insecurity. It also makes them vulnerable to propaganda, right? Okay. Well, let me get to that in a second. So you have large unemployed populations. You have machine production, and you had at the time little diversity of industries. I mean, you don't have the product diversity you have today. Today we have a lot of product diversity due to the advanced technologies, right, and develop specialized services. Okay. Back then you had few, so you had few alternative jobs. You had skewed labor market power, right? That resulted in skewed labor market power, and plus the international competition. That led to low wages, right? That led to poverty, insecurity, and all that insecurity fed into nationalism, all right? And then the low wages and insufficient D1, which is final consumption, not for investment. It's final consumption. That and plus limited product diversity, right? That led to quick saturation of home markets, and uh, this resulted in frequent economic crashes, business cycles, oversaturation, overinvestment, over speculation, right? Uh, price plummeting, economic crashes, bank failures, little incentive to invest to increase production capacity in the home market, which will only decrease price and profits. So, with little product diversity, if you increase production capacity, build more factories, well, that, demand is limited as it is, right? Demand, the supply is so, extensive, demand is stretched thin, prices are falling, you're going to go out of business. So that increased the attractiveness of exporting capital overseas. All right. So you had better investments in the colonies. That was a factor increasing colonial competition. Better investments over there. You're going to make a lot more money developing new resources in new territories, developing all the infrastructure, public utilities, right? Better investments overseas. Home is saturated. It's already overinvested in the home market. To gain greater profits in upstream integration, exploiting resources, and developing untapped markets, lucrative infrastructure developments, utilities, transportation, electricity, water, sewage. All right. Now, one of the first countries to do this was Great Britain, and a key market they invested in was the United States. Even after the Revolutionary War, all right, they invested in our railroad systems, all right, and they're a big source of iron and steel. USA imported much of its iron and steel, prior to the Civil War. Great Britain was the biggest source. So the British were the first to do that, and they invested in their empire. Also outside their empire in the United States. USA invested. We invested in Latin America. Right after the Civil War, we're moving into Latin America. We're moving into Mexico, then Central America. We're moving into the Caribbean. All right. Moving into Hawaii in the latter part of the 19th century, right? And then we're exporting. The U.S. exported capital really jumped after World War I. Why? Because we were flush with money. The wealthy Americans, the power elite, Wall Street, also made tons of money off of the war. That's when U.S. capital export really jumped. World War I. World War I was a huge moneymaker for the USA. That was the start of the military-industrial complex. War being a big moneymaker in and of itself. Weapons manufacture, munitions manufacture, right? All right. So, now, all this insecurity, desperate poverty, rapid urbanization, right? All the bad living conditions, that made populations susceptible to propaganda, right? When you're insecure, you're more susceptible. The two main propagandas early on were nationalism and communist propaganda, right? And in terms of communist propaganda, the first form was Marx. He's looking at this. This happened earlier. Then Lenin. Lenin's looking at this. This happened afterwards. All that colonial competition became big in the latter part of the 19th century. So Lenin's looking at this. And Lenin's version is the one that actually played out. Marx's version did play out. It never occurred, really. Even in Russia, it never occurred because Russia was not an industrial nation. Russia was really an agrarian nation. Uh, so, uh, so Lenin's version different in basically where the revolutions will occur. Marx said the revolutions will occur within industrial nations that are industrializing over here, all right? And it's going to be a fight between the proletariat or the working class versus the capitalists who were the owners of the means of production, right? Lenin said, nah, 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 nah. That's not what's happening, all right? And Lenin had the advantage of seeing later development, right? So he said, no, it's going to happen in the third world. That's where all the communist revolutions are going to occur, right? And it's going to be the third world countries. It's not going to be the proletariat fighting the capitalists. It's going to be the third world countries fighting the first world countries, the colonial powers, right? And Lenin was right. But Lenin really copied J.A. Hobson's analysis. J.A. Hobson was a British economist, right? And what he said is largely what I said here, right? And I'll be damned if this is not exactly the pattern that's followed by all these damn colonial nations, including the USA. Let me give you an example. United Fruit in Central America, not just in Guatemala. You know, it's known primarily for being in Guatemala, throughout Central America. All right, they did all this stuff. They control land. United Fruit, power elite company, right? Washington leaders owning that company. Go down the list. I'd have to pull up the list again. All the damn guys, all the power guys in Washington, right? They own 40% of the arable land in Guatemala, right? They own railroads. They own ports. They own electricity, water, sewage, communications, right? They control labor. They did all this stuff. They controlled imports, distribution markets. Don't tell me this stuff didn't happen. That's exactly what they did. And you squeeze every drop of wealth out of that country. It's extracted. It's not reinvested. Right? It's like a leech. It's like a vampire. It's sucking the blood dry. All right. So, I mean, that's just the way it was. Right? They're looking out for number one. They're looking out for themselves. They don't give a damn. They don't even look at what's going on. If you see anything, you close your eyes. You ignore it. Put it out of your mind. You rationalize. You make yourself feel good about it. That's what people do. You know, I talked to this girl the other day. Seemed like a nice girl, young woman, right? I asked her, about patriotism. What is patriotism in your mind? Are you patriotic, right? And I started talking about all our wars. And then she said, oh, there had to have been a good reason. It's just what we had to do at the time. She's rationalizing. We didn't have to do it. We didn't have to kill all these people to take their land. It was not necessary. It wasn't like we were going to die. We wanted it. You see how quickly people rationalize? And I bet that person seemed like a nice girl. I bet that person thinks, I'm a moral person. I'm a good person. Right? And she just rationalized and justified mass murder. You see how easy it is? Then you paint it over with patriotism. Makes it super easy. Oh, it's a patriotic war. That's why I hate patriotism. It's convenient wallpaper to paper over our evil, nasty wars. Bullshit. It's a smokescreen. Communism is an illogical and ineffective system because it destroys incentive. Right? And because of that, it is a major waste of human resource. Major waste of human talents and potentials and abilities and energies. I mean, that's why communism failed. The most important resource is human resource, and it screws that up. Of course it's going to fail. You know, I mean, the idiocy thinking that system's going to work is beyond belief. It kills productivity. So, it was right that we fought it. Right? I'm not a materialistic person, but I think people should be, responsible, hard workers, produce for themselves. Everyone should contribute. Right? None of us get anything for free. Right? People should be productive. Right? It's good for them to be productive. It's good for their soul to be productive. Right? So I don't have a problem that we fought communism. My problem was with the way we fought it. The chief way we fought communism in the third world was by installing and supporting brutal, corrupt, and too often murderous dictators. I mean, murderous. And they're doing some serious, crazy-ass counterinsurgency methods. And we teach this stuff. We taught it. A lot of what we taught for counterinsurgency, we followed the French model, which was brutal. Kidnap, torture, executions, terrorism, mutilating bodies, dumping them in the streets. I mean, you said, no, USA would. We did that shit. We taught that crap at the School of Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia. We taught crap like that. With mobile training teams throughout countries in Latin America. Reagan administration saw it as, we're just taking off the gloves. We're going to fight tough. You see how they use euphemisms? Euphemistic bullshit. It's almost like the second Bush administration saying that, enhanced interrogation, in order to meet the criteria of torture, has to result in pain consistent with death or organ failure, or body failure. Well, that's death, right? Now, how are you going to know they're going through pain like that? Is there a pain meter you can hook them up to? Hell no. The only way you're going to know is if they die or the organs fail, and then they die. Right? They didn't call it torture. They called it enhanced interrogation. All the euphemistic bullshit. All right, so we supported some nasty-ass people. Jorge Mbico, Chavarant, Pinochet. Pinochet was a bastard in Chile. Armas. Batista. Batista was in Cuba. Batista was a friggin' mobster. He was tied to the USA mafia. Somoza, Nicaragua. He was a scumbag. GM, right? He's a key reason for the Vietnam War. Marcos, Noriega, Suharto, all these assholes going down the list. Samuel Doe, right? All these. This is a short. Saddam Hussein. This is a short list This is just a sample of the assholes we supported. Right? Now, did this help fight communism? Maybe, but it also did it fuel communism? Did it validate communist ideology? Did it prove that this is exactly what we did? It's the exact same thing we did in neocolonialism. Right? You install a dictator. So that's what the communists are saying. Right? So this validated communist idea. This fueled communist movements. My ass is fighting it. You want to fight communism? You undermine it. You cut the legs from out from underneath it. So was it anti-communist? Or was it neo-colonial control continuation? And did it actually fuel communism? I mean, it's just irrational. It's illogical. Are we guilty of that a lot? Hell yeah. Oh, Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11. What should we do? I don't know. Let's go invade Iraq. Oh, the Japanese attacked us in Pearl Harbor. What should we do? Oh, I don't know. Let's go invade Mexico. Do all of America fall for irrational, stupid crap? Yeah. Oh, here's the rationale for it. Dictatorships and double standards. This book here, Jean Kirkpatrick. I just hate this chick. She became the poster child for the power elite. Oh yeah, okay. This justifies our support for dictators. Her bullshit idea that, oh, autocratic regimes are not as bad as totalitarian regimes, right? And they're more likely to become democratic. Oh, bullshit. Well, these murderous bastards are better than... communist regimes are bad, right? But these guys are just as bad, just as murderous, and they stood no better chance of becoming democracies. In fact, you could say that communism stood a better chance. How many communist countries are left in the world? They're all democracies now. Of some quality. All right? You got China that's left, you got Cuba, you got North Korea, and Vietnam, I don't know, to what extent it's got democrat. I mean, it's a capitalist country, but that's for sure. I'm not sure to what... They all have democracies to some extent. I know they vote in China, but there's a one-party system, right? Which is bullshit. But there's not many left. All right. All the rest became democracy. So, was that true? Or were there other motives? Protect access to strategic resources. I mean, this was a big U.S. motive during the Cold War because the Soviet bloc and the Western bloc were autarkic trading blocs, right? Let's say cobalt. I don't know. Where's cobalt? Congo, right? Let's say Congo went to the communist side. Well, we lose access to all that damn cobalt. Or titanium. I know that's big sources in Africa. If that went communist, well, we lose access to that. All right. Protect multinational corporations. Right? I mean, this was huge. All right. This was a motive of the USA. Prevent reforms like tax, land, concessions, contracts, right? Concession contracts, prevent nationalization of key resources. I mean, these are reasons why we overthrow governments. That's why we overthrew Guatemala. That's why we overthrew Chile. That's why we overthrew Iran. All of them were democracies, and we installed dictators. Key example is down here, Jacobo Arbenz, Guatemala. He was accused of being a communist. All his reforms were market-based, moderate reforms, but it threatened United Fruit, controlled by big power in Washington. Right? So they accused him of being a communist. The only hard evidence of any connection to communists, the U.S. manufactured. You look at Iran. That was part of the CIA plan. Manufacture ties, false ties with communism. Declassified CIA plan. It's stating you manufactured a communist threat. Now with Arbenz, what the U.S. government did is they started building up a force to overthrow the Guatemalan government. And I think it was in Honduras they built it up. And, neighboring country to Guatemala. And so the U.S. totally financed this, supplied the weapons, supplied the money, right? And they did it openly. They waved in front of Arben's face to threaten him, right? We're going to overthrow your ass. We're going to overthrow your ass. So now, Guatemala did not have a defense force. They had basically no military. So he's scrambling to get weapons. He went to Canada to buy weapons. That was blocked diplomatically by the U.S. He went to Germany to try to get weapons. That was blocked by the U.S. West Germany. He went to South Africa to try to buy weapons. Blocked by the U.S. Every Western source was blocked by him, by the U.S. So his last resort was go to the communist bloc. Now, he didn't go to the Soviet Union. He went to one of the satellite countries. You go to the Soviet Union, you're dead meat. You're a commie for sure. He went to Czechoslovakia. Boom! They got their evidence. He's a commie. That's an invasion of communism into Central America. Next thing you know, it's going to come up through Texas. Yeah, like all the Texas rednecks are going to allow that. I mean, yeah, that's what they're saying. It's going to spread throughout Latin America, Central America, then up through Mexico. Next thing you know, communism knocking on our doorstep. That's the fear crap they passed, the fear mongering. And it didn't work. That justified it. Let's take down our beds. And you know what resulted? 40 years of brutal, murderous dictatorships. Guatemala became a nightmare. A moderate, progressive leader, but he threatened United Fruit's power. He threatened United Fruit's fundamental control of all of this. He wanted independence. The threat was not communism. The threat was economic independence. The threat was democracies. You can control a dictator, but you can't control all the people who are going to vote for legislation, vote for leaders who are going to do what's best for them. We weren't supporting democracies. I mean, it came down to money. It's more important. Bullshit. Questions. Was the threat of communism, was the threat communism, or was it reformist leaders and economic independence? I mean, this Iran nationalizing its oil. You don't let them nationalize their oil. You know, if you let Iran nationalize oil and get away with it, throughout the world, other nations are going to do the same thing. So they're going to say, this is our resource. This is our rubber. This is our copper. This is our bauxite. Screw you. They're They're going to nationalize it. Right? And don't think, like my friend, oh, they got a fair square, they made contracts. Man, these contracts are bullshit. You're making a contract to some dictator. You leverage a dictator. I mean, look at Iran. Iran tried to renegotiate the concession deal with Britain. Britain said, screw you. So they said, all right, fine, we'll nationalize our oil. And then we overthrow the Iranian government. U.S., CIA, British MI6. Then we install a dictator. All right. I mean, that's how it worked. The idiots. Oh, it was good versus bad. It was communist versus capitalist. You think they're not bad capitalists? You think capitalism is all good? Now, I'm all for free enterprise, free trade, all that stuff. Nurturing markets, protecting markets. All right? Communism is stupid. But at the same time, I'm against all this exploitation when it creates all these problems. Who ends up fighting it? Do the rich power elites fight it? Hell no! The people of those countries that I'm fighting are U.S. boys. U.S. military boys. Fighting their damn wars. How many banana wars did we fight? All right. Did our installation of brutal dictators was a threat communism or reformist leaders and economic independence? B. Did our installation of brutal dictators fight communism or validate communism, commie ideology, and fuel it? Did it fuel communist movements? C. Did it make more conflict? D. Was this way of fighting communists actually promoting it? Right? Was it anti-strategic? And in making more conflict, did it make more money for the military-industrial complex, who are the very same power elite? They're making money from both ends, from exploiting resources, exploiting the economies of third world countries, and from the conflict this creates. It's a moneymaker both ways. Was monolithic communism a real threat? Or was that total bullshit? You know what monolithic communism is? There's one unified worldwide communist movement. Oh, bullshit. Right? What you do is, you want to fight communism, first thing you do is divide and conquer. You set China against Russia. You set China versus Vietnam. You do divide and conquer. That's a better strategy. Better strategy is undermining communist ideology, not validating it. You see how irrational this was? This was the Cold War. We're justifying and validating communist ideology and fighting it at the same time. Now, how stupid is that? All right? So this formed third world nationalism. When you're screwing them, it's just like the nations that got screwed by France. That fueled their nationalism. Well, we're screwing these people, so that fuels their nationalism. Then they're all a bunch of nationalistic bastards. And that fuels more conflict. And nationalism and patriotism is a tool that leaders use to manipulate their populations into wars. And boy, do people love their nationalism. They gobble that crap down like pig slop. Because it's all about me feel good, my nation. They love waving their flags. They love blowing off their fireworks. Getting all pumped up. Yeah, USA's good because I blow up these fireworks. Well, how stupid is that? look at the real history. They don't look at our wars. They don't look at the fact that we're a huge warmonger nation. They just wave the flag. Oh, yeah, let's support this war. They support evil. No, we support our values. Oh, my ass you do. You put country before values. You put it before morality. Christians put it before godliness. They do. They'll find a way to rationalize the bullshit. Oh, it's for good. That's human nature. That's idios. The lowlife. The masses. Ignoble. Corner cutting. Immoral. Self-serving. Lying. And stupid. Idiot. Ignorant and stupid. Know nothing. Lacking intellectual capacity to analyze. All right. So that is the birth of nationalism. Napoleonic Wars and Industrial Revolution played a key role, right, in forming nationalism. And that led to wars, big wars. World War I, World War II, all right? Cold War. Led to the Cold War. Helped fuel communist bullshit. So really all this colonialism was the main fuel for communism. Hopefully that helps you better understand the 19th century and all the bullshit that occurred. All right, I'm going to stop there.